Hey all, Heretic here, and today in the Battlegrounds we're talking about Nagas, we're talking about dragons for Season 9 and all the fun announcements. Let's jump into stuff, but sadly I need to start with two heroes I spaced on yesterday. I was moving so many files around, somehow these got minimized in a corner and then forgotten about. So embarrassingly enough, I'm going to cover them now because might as well own my mistake and just show you. We're going to start with Xeric Master Cloner. Their hero power is Cloning Gallery, and it's summon an exact copy of a friendly minion once per game. Now, these are always very powerful mechanics where you can take an exact copy of a minion. It usually means if it's gold, if it has a ton of stats, whatever you've done to it, you're going to get two of them. The issue with this hero power is much like Reno Jackson, is it's a one-shot hero power. And once you use it, it's kind of gone, and then you're kind of stuck with whatever else you can find, or dominating the world if you high rolled enough, I guess. This hero power is unique in so much that, yeah, you're going to get an exact copy, and that is really good. The question is going to be, what are you going to be copying? Because if you wait too long, you're probably just going to die. Don't wait till you have that golden tier 5 you want two of. Maybe you should just pop it on the first tier 6 you get, or hey, you tripled into a Light Fang, and you're like, well, it's not the minion I wanted, but now I've got two of them to scale the board a little faster, something along those lines. I would say use this not super early, but the moment you find something that's good, use the tempo or economy that gives you to then jump up a little faster to get to the actual direction stuff and just enjoy the game you got. It's an interesting hero power as long as you don't hang on to it too long. Do I think this hero is going to be terribly good? Probably not in normal metas, but I think when we get into, like, if buddies come back, trinkets, whatever meta returns, that will give you a lot more potential with this kind of hero power. The next hero we have is Exarch Othar, and their hero power is Arcane Knowledge, costing nothing, so good. But what it does is the next tavern spell you buy costs one less, unlocks on turn 3. Now, I don't love this hero power by any stretch. It is basically kind of meh. It's like, oh, I can get a spell for one less. I mean, yes, when it's free, that feels good, but alternatively, just not exciting. Now, the interesting thing I have to know to myself is, does this affect stack? So if the first time I use it, it's one less, but at the same time I don't use it, does that next time when I use it makes it two less? Like, does it keep making them one less? And I would imagine that's how it works. But even then, it's just not exciting. It's like, okay, well, if I don't use it for 3 turns, I'll get a 3-cost spell for free. Oh, exciting. For what hero powers do, I feel like this is very meh at best. This kind of feels like a hero that doesn't really need to even be in the pool, because if you make it better, if you make it cost 2 less, now it's too good. So I really don't know how you can make this go from meh to playable. Maybe I'm horribly wrong, or there's something in there that I'm missing, but tell me what you think. Is this an interesting hero power? Because to me, it kind of feels like trash. It's time to talk Naga. There are a lot of changes to every tribe, and Naga are no exception to that rule. Let's take a look at the Naga that are leaving. We're going to be starting with the ever-exciting Snail Cavalry leaving. Who cares? I honestly do not like this minion at all, and don't mind its departure in any way, shape, or form. Goodbye, horrible. Next is Reef Riffer. Reef Riffer in tier 2, I do like. It's not a great minion, but at tier 2, it does do an interesting thing. It works well with other minions in the tribe, so sad to see that one go a little bit. Next, we have Shell Whistler. I like this minion a lot. I will often buy it just to get those random tier 2 spells, because most of them tend to be minion generation, economy, like they're just good. So I don't mind cycling this at all. But they're gone, so what can you do? Deep Blue Crooner is gone. Now, talk about an iconic card for Naga. We are not going to deal with, 100, 100, 200, 200 buffs, going into the shop, eating the shop, buffing our minions, all the various ways we abused it. I'll miss you, Deep Blue. Next, we have Soft-Hearted Siren, the Naga you never wanted, but sometimes you got on an early triple, and you're like, well, it'll do the job. Okay. Basically, you're praying for those random spellcrafts to actually be good, when typically they were random, they were kind of meh. Tide Mistress Athissa is gone. Tide Mistress Athissa, I really enjoy. I'm kind of sad to see it gone. It finally went to tier 5. There's more of them. I didn't get to play it much because Naga right now aren't great, but all gone now. Orgazoa the Tender. This poor thing comes and goes all the time. It's not an exciting card, but I do like when I triple into it and it's a bad triple and there's nothing else better because it's at least economy because you're going to play that. It's going to give you another Naga. If you need multiple spell cast, it was good, but gone. Slither Spear, Lord of the Gains. I didn't care when they brought it back, and I don't care when they're taking it out. This is a card I'm happy to see just kind of meh, gone. We have exactly one returning Naga, and that is Silabaz the Vindictive, tier 6, 5/8 Naga. Spellcraft, discover a tavern spell. I love this Naga. I have no complaints about the return of this thing. Please, bring it on. Let's have some more of them. All right, let's talk about the new Naga. Let's look at all the crazy fun stuff we have. And we're going to start at tier 1 with a 2/1 Demon Naga, the Ominous Seer. Battle Cry, the next tavern spell you buy costs 1 less. I mean, it's a Battle Cry minion on tier 1, so brand players cheer. You've got another Battle Cry. Overall, it's going to be a card I'm more interested in cycling in the later game when I have a unit like Brand, as opposed to actually wanting to ever start on my board. But I mean, sometimes the right things are in the shop. You've got the right circumstances. This can be good. So no big complaints. Not super excited about this, but it'll see play. Jumping up to tier 2, we have the 3/3 Naga, the Thaumaturgist. Turgist. I liked it when I just sit here and try to pronounce these things on the fly for you. I don't want to think about them too hard beforehand because I know people love the fact that I just can't say this shit, and that is a mouthful. We have Spellcraft, give a minion +1/+1 until next turn, improved by every 4 spells you've cast this game. So this is not a bad card to get early, and if you cycle enough, Spellcraft can get to a significant buff. Think of this as kind of Deep Blue, but a little slower. But at the same time, it's at tier 2, so that means there's more of them. You're going to be able to start fast with it. This has some real potential to be a fun card. This could be a silly little tier 2 that's trash, or this could end up being part of your endgame comp and just be throwing out massive buffs. I really like the potential and idea behind this card. Let's see if it actually works. At tier 4, we have the 5/6 Naga, Arcane Cannoneer. Whenever this attacks, deal 1 damage to the target, improved by every 4 spells you've cast this game. So I would imagine the way this is going to work is when it attacks, before it hits, it's going to shoot this shot out because we've seen minions similar to this in the past. We'll hit that target and then it will do physical damage if that target is still alive. These are typically great at taking out anything with a divine shield because you don't care about the shield that much. You still don't love that the shot's wasted, especially if this has been buffed a lot. But still good. I mean, this thing is every 4 spells you've cast this game. That means it's keeping track of the early game. And if you've cast a lot of spells and you're playing Naga, Spellcraft counts as spells. These attack can get pretty significant. Now, taking into account the kind of boards we deal with now and the scale and scope of them, yeah, not going to be competitive in the game today. But in the new world where everything's a little weaker, this looks a lot better, and just that ability to bump off shields is pretty damn good for itself. So I really think this minion has some potential, and I'm looking forward to getting some play with it. At tier 5, we have the Darkcrest Strategist, and this is a 4/5 Naga that Spellcraft, get a random tier 1 Naga, upgrades each turn. Well, I mean, you're getting it later in the game, so obviously it's not going to be giving you high-level Naga right away. If you triple into this early, I think this card has some real potential. If you triple into this late, maybe it spends a turn on your board basically for economy, but typically I don't want this unless I get it early. I get this early, I'm gonna love this card. I get it late, it is just a cycle card at best. Showy Cyclist is a 4/3 Naga that has Death Rattle. Give your Naga +1/+1, improved by every spells you've cast this game. Once again, Naga want you to cast a lot of spells, so I really think this has some fun potential. If you've cast enough spells, the Death Rattle it's giving is actually interesting. Naga never really have Death Rattle minions, so that in itself is just a unique thing to see with Naga and has some potential. Once again, if you've cast a lot of spells, this could be decent. Now, the issue with it is this is a combat buff, so it's temporary, so I don't know if I'm going to love this on my late game board, But once again, if you've cast enough spells, it's going to be hard to resist something like this. Maybe you could throw it out there with a Titus and a Monstrous Macaw and get some really big stats on your board. It has some really interesting implications. This could be fun, or it could be complete trash. Finally, we have at tier 6 the 5/4 Naga, the Ground Breaker. After you play a Naga, gain +1/+1. Once again, improved by every 4 spells you've cast this game. Now, at this point, you have probably cast a lot of spells if it's tier 6. Even if you're tripling into this from 5, you've cast a decent bit. And if every time you play a Naga, you're going to get this buff and it's going to keep scaling based on the spells you're casting, this can really, really get massive. These are permanent buffs that are going to stack up really fast. And I got to say, this has some real potential. Some tier 6s you triple into are just basically dead. And this will be dead if you haven't cast many or any spells. But if you've cast a lot of spells, maybe you're just playing Quillbore and you've played a ton of blood gems and you triple into 2 garbage things in this. Well, it's instantly going to be bigger just because you now can cycle a couple Naga and gain those buffs. Now, odds are if you get a bunch of blood gems, you might not want to do that, but you also might not have anything great Quillbore other than generation. Maybe you just move all the gems over to something else and enjoy the fact that you can now cycle out some Naga and just make them massive. I don't know, just see what happens. But that's it for the Naga. That's what we have so far. I must say, I'm intrigued. I really like the new direction they're putting Naga. I think it has some real potential. I see some minions that I'm concerned about that I think might be very, very busted based on the number of spells you've cast. But maybe 4 is that sweet spot. Maybe that's not too many. Maybe that's just right. I don't know. We're going to get some games, but Groundbreaker really excites me and I think has some fun potential in this game. If you just cast a few spells, and if you're playing Naga, you're probably going to cast a whole lot. All right, it's dragon time. Let us talk about the dragons that we're going to be leaving, changing, and coming to the battlegrounds. And I gotta tell you, some interesting stuff here. But let's see how it all plays out. First, the dragons that are leaving. First, Glim Guardian. I never really enjoyed this coin flip minion. It's like, oh, do I win? Do I not? I'm like, yeah, it's just not my jam. So don't really mind this leaving. Next, we're gonna be losing Twilight Emissary. A good utility dragon, but nothing you're ever too excited beyond. Turn 3 and 4 after that, it's kind of eh. Next, we've got the Roaring Rallier leaving, a decent dragon that is good for buffing some of our early game stuff, but no big deal there. We're going to be losing Wannabe Gargoyle, who we just got. I'm going to miss you, Gargoyle. I do like golding this minion. It is an interesting thing, but its time is over. Amber Guardian gone again. I'm sorry, did you like Divine Shields on everybody? You're not doing it with this minion, at least. And one I'm actually really going to be sad about seeing leaving is the Disco Shuffler. I love this minion. Do you have a battle cry you really want to trigger again? Disco. Do you just want to find another battle cry minion? Disco. It's just good minions that trigger things very effectively, and I really like this thing a lot, so I'm kind of sad to see this one gone. Yulon Fortune Granter gone. I don't really care. Not a big deal. I've used it a couple times. It is useful in certain situations, but otherwise, eh. And Hoarding Hate Spawn, admittedly, of all the tier 6 dragons, whether or not it's good, I don't really care to play it because it's kind of boring thematically. I'm like, okay, I steal 10/10 from my opponent, which goes on my minion temporarily. Could be permanent, but yeah, there's more interesting things I could be playing. All right, what dragons are going to be changing and or returning? We're going to start with the newly tier 2 electric synthesizer, a 2/3 that has battle cry and start of combat. Give your other dragons +1/+1. Well, I mean, this is a decent buff. Obviously, the battle cry is permanent, but the start of combat is going to only be temporary unless you have ways to make them permanent. I don't hate this at all. The fact that it's only your dragons in the early game makes it a little questionable because, you know, it's neat that it buffs your other dragons 1/1, but if you've only got 1 or 2 other dragons because it's tier 2, it's not gonna feel good. But if you do happen to have 3, 4, a whole board full of dragons early quick, this is gonna feel really nice and powerful and give you a quick way to tier. It all depends what you manage to find. Has some interesting potential. Outback Smolder is a tier 4, 4/3 dragon. At the end of your turn, get a 2/1 Smolder Wing with Battle Cry, give a dragon +5 attack. Now, There's the obvious potential of using these for triples, which, Drakari will make it come a little faster. But at the same time, it's just the fact that it's a minion that makes minions, that is battle cries, which typically synergizes with dragons anyways, and the just battle cry of attack is pretty good itself, making this not a bad minion at all in the mid and early game to get. Late game, when you want this, and that's basically when you're trying to cheese it to print triples, but otherwise still a good minion. At tier 4, the 2/4 dragon Regurning the Untamed is back for what feels like the 75th time. Here he is, back again. At the end of your turn, gain +1/+2 for each other friendly dragon. Now, if I remember right, in the last iteration of this was tier 5. I'll have to go check, but either way, it was too slow back in the day. Now it's the end of turn, works with Drakari, so there is that. There are lots of ways we can make Drakari work in a dragon board still, but at the same time, it is slow unless you get that Drakari or you get this absurdly early. If you have a board full of dragons and you triple into this, it's gonna be decent. If you're picking this up on turn 11, this is a card you better not keep on your board unless you're looking to lose. Either way, Regurning back. Let's see how it works this time. Nether Drake is a tier 5 4/12 dragon. At the end of your turn, give your dragons +1 attack and upgrade this. So once again, another end of a turn effect. And it's an upgradable effect now, and so much that it just has to be on your board and it will keep giving more attack every turn. Definitely has some potential. Now, the issue with this is you are just throwing an attack and not gaining a health unless you have another way to do that, which dragons have some things, but it's going to be interesting to see if this is worth it on tier 5, being that +1 to start. Is this too slow? I mean, if you triple into this once again early, definitely can scale up attack pretty fast, but the problem is you need more than just a little attack, but it could do the job. We're going to have to get in some games and see how well it works. Next, the return of a minion that I was so happy when it was gone because it was so problematic, but it's back again, so rejoice. Tier 5 7/6 Undead Dragon Nightbane Ignited Taunt Death Rattle. Give 2 random friendly minions this minion's attack. This was a problem so long in the battlegrounds. It just broke so much stuff and made dragons stupidly good. Don't really understand, or even undead boards, just the fact that you could put a Kel'Thuzad next to this thing and print permanent attack buffs for your boards. And it was just crazy how much you could end up giving in the end with your aura getting higher. And dragons in general, just with a lot of divine shields and all of a sudden stacking attack around. It was kind of dumb, and it's back, and they haven't changed it. So I don't really know how it's gonna be, but it was always pretty stupidly powerful before. My first guess is it's still stupidly powerful. Long has she been gone, but tier 6 8/4 Nadina the Red Death Rattle. Give 3 friendly dragons divine shield is back. Now, this was a minion that basically was there at the start of dragons and kind of defined dragons for a long time for late game. If you didn't get Nadina, you lost. If you did get Nadina, you typically won. Let's see how it changes. It's been a while since we had her, and maybe the meta has changed up enough where the game just is so fundamentally different this won't matter, but my best guess is this is still going to be a very effective card. And finally, you've been asking for this buff for literal years. They felt weak, but now is their moment in the sun? Tier 6 4/12 Dragon Kalecgos Arcane Aspect got a buff. After you trigger a battle cry, give your dragons +1/+2. Now, I'm not sure if that's the buff anyone expected. I'm pretty sure everyone was thinking like a 2/2 buff, but there's also the chance that might be too much. I think the 1/2 buff might be okay, but once again, Kalecgos is still looking slow. The issue with Kalecgos has always been you need to have kind of 2 of them, or at the very least, a brand in one, if not a golden brand, and that's tough to pull off. I've still won with Kalecgos recently. Kalecgos is still a viable minion. It's just slow, and you need nobody in the lobby to high roll to make it work. Now, maybe in the new meta, you'll have time to do this. But looking at some of the other things I've seen, I'm curious if this is still too slow, or maybe if in playtesting, it ended up at just the right speed. We'll see soon. Now we've got the new dragons, and I must say there's surprisingly few new dragons, but they're interesting, so there is that. A lot of dragons changed. So I don't feel like they needed to add a ton of new dragons. And I do like the new ones because they're just unique and I enjoy that. At tier 3, 2/2 dragon Reverber Drake. And this is Battlecry cast Echoing Roar on a friendly dragon. This is interesting. It just casting a tavern spell on a minion that's targeted has unique. I like that. It's just different, right? Echoing Roar, for those who don't know, is give a friendly minion at the end of your turn, gain +2/+2. Once again, there is a lot of end of turn things we're seeing in dragons. We're definitely getting a start of combat, end of turn type option here in addition to the Battlecry builds. So this does offer some interesting potential. And this spell is a Battlecry effect that we're getting. So that means if you have a brand, you'd get 2 copies of the spell cast. I kind of enjoy this. This seems neat. I want to see how this plays out. Next up, it's nice to get a feel that the devs actually do test some of this stuff. And when I say that, you're like, haha, and I'm like, no, wait, listen to this next card. Tier 4, 5/6 dragon, Efficient Engineer. Battlecry, trigger a friendly minion's end of turn effects. Except Young Murkai. It's like they knew. Instantly, people would be like, oh yeah, I've got some end of turn stuff. Oh look, I've got a Young Murkai, and it's next to 2 Battlecries. Oh well, I guess I'll trigger Young Murkai. It is nice to see that they know, because what happens if you put this next to a Young Murkai, and your only end of a turn effect is Young Murkai? You get an infinite effect. You would put this down, next to Young Murkai, he'd trigger it, be like, okay, triggering Battlecries. Well, it would trigger the other one Battlecry, and then it would go back to the Efficient Engineer and go, here's your Battlecry. And he would go, oh, I should trigger an end of turn effect. And it would never end. You'd literally go infinite just watching those Battlecries trigger. Now, if your only Battlecry was Efficient Engineer, that wouldn't be a problem. But something tells me you're gonna have something else next to it. And at the very least, you might have a Caligos on your board. And oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, your only Battlecry was Efficient Engineer. So you're just infinite with 1 Caligos. Oh, you had a brand? It doesn't matter, because once you get 1 trigger of it, you don't need the brand. It's gonna buff everything forever. So thank you. Thank you, devs, for being aware that someone immediately would have said, oh, Young Murkai, let's go. This would have been fun. I'm glad we didn't have to find this out day 1. Thank you, guys. All right, that's it. That is all today's announcements. Now, I really like the changes to Nagas a whole lot. They have a lot of new things. They have a lot of changed things, and they feel really interesting and exciting. Dragons, they took a lot of the pre-existing dragons or brought back some old ones and changed them up a little bit, and they added a couple new ones, which I feel are really interesting. And I kind of like where this is going. So we've seen mechs now, we've seen dragons, we've seen Naga, and I feel like every new tribe is leaving me more excited about the new season. But that is just me. You know, I'm sitting here hyped up on copium. My hair's turning white. That's one of the first signs that you're an addict. And I am just really, really in love with what I'm seeing. Now, I don't know if the other tribes are going to be just as exciting. Hint, most of them are. But I really do think this is going to go in a good way. So that being said, hey, I want to hear your comments. What do you think? Do you think these things are interesting? Do you think they're kind of boring? What's your take on it? Because while I'm excited, maybe you're seeing something I'm not. Maybe you're like, actually, Heretic, these suck because X. You were wrong because you forgot this or you misread that. You know, the things I usually hear. Fine. Reading comprehension, obviously not my strongest suit. I try. Thanks for watching all. I hope you had a good time. If you want to see some more, come hang out on Twitch when I'm on there. It's most of the time. And if you want to just leave comments and hang out, I'm always up for it. All right, all. Have yourself a great night. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the battlegrounds. Till then, have a good one. Later.